ran the mess hall at Bristlecone Depot for 11 years before anyone official noticed I was running a den underneath it. That's not a metaphor. There is an actual den. Under the prep table, behind the flour bins, where the deck plating never quite sealed right after the last resupply retrofit, I found the gap my second month on station and never mentioned it to anyone, because a gap like that is useful to a cook. You can lose a dented can back there and nobody asks questions. Then one autumn, the mining outfit up on the ridge cleared a denning slope to lay a new strip road, and 2 tundrek cubs came down the scree with nothing left to follow home to, and the gap under my prep table stopped being about cans. I want to be clear about what a tundrek is, because the word cub makes people picture something you could carry in one arm. A grown tundrek stands taller than a man at the shoulder before it even rears, built low and heavy through the chest, claws made for splitting frozen ground, and incidentally, anything softer than frozen ground. They den in family groups on the high slopes, mother and litter, and they do not forgive people who come near the den. The mining crew knew all this. They cleared the slope anyway, because a denning season doesn't show up on a strip road schedule. And by the time anyone found the litter, the mother was already gone in the blast work, and the cubs were alone on an exposed rock face with winter coming. Nobody at the depot wanted the job of dealing with that. So I did what a cook does when something small and hungry shows up at the back door. I fed them. I did not adopt them. I want that on record, because for the first 2 months I told myself, and told provisions clerk Marnie Oduya, and told anyone else who caught me sliding a bowl under the table, that I was simply not going to let 2 animals starve to death 40 meters from a working kitchen while I had scraps going into the recycler anyway. That was true. It was also, obviously, a lie about the size of what was happening. The first weeks, they wouldn't come near me at all. I'd set the bowl by the gap, back away to the far counter, and pretend to be busy with something that didn't need doing, and only after I'd gone still and quiet for a long stretch would a nose come out, then a paw, then the whole small shivering weight of it, snatching the food and vanishing back under the plating, like the light itself was dangerous. It took 3 weeks before either of them ate while I was still in the room. It took 2 months before the smaller one let the bowl touch her paw without flinching. I never rushed it. You don't rush an animal that's already lost its mother to a strip road crew. You let it decide, on its own clock, whether the hand that feeds it is also a hand that might hurt it. By the time the frost broke, the cubs, I'd started calling them Ember and Coal, because one had a rust-colored blaze on her chest and the other didn't, and cooks are not known for their poetry, slept under my table every night like it belonged to them, which by then it more or less did, and Ember had taken to falling asleep with her chin resting flat on my boot, while I did the evening prep, as if the weight of a person nearby was something she'd decided, finally, she could trust enough to sleep through. Depot Regulation, Section 9, subsection something I never bothered memorizing. No unregistered wildlife inside a pressurized structure. I was violating it daily, twice a day, whenever I was on shift. So was Marnie. So eventually, was most of the kitchen staff, and half the loading crew, who'd started detouring through the mess hall on their way to the bay doors, for no reason anybody would state out loud. The trouble was, cubs grow, and tundrek cubs grow the way everything on that ridge grows, fast, mean about it, and entirely without asking your permission. By the second summer, Ember could rest her head on the prep table without standing up. Cole had a growl that made the ceiling vents rattle when he did it in his sleep, which he did constantly, over nothing, the way big dumb dogs growl at dreams. They still slept in the den gap, because it was theirs and because, I believe this, though I can't prove it to a skeptical man, because it was where I was, but it had gotten harder to pretend nobody official would ever ask questions. Somebody official asked questions in the fall. Supply Master Orden Vale ran depot logistics from the administrative wing, and to his credit, he wasn't wrong about anything on paper. 2 apex predators, full-grown, quartered inside a food preparation facility, consuming ration mass that wasn't allocated to them, in flagrant violation of Section 9. He came down to the mess hall himself to deliver the removal order, which told you how seriously he meant it. Men like Vale don't walk their own paperwork unless they intend to watch it enforced. He found the hall at second shift, full. Every table taken, the loading crew, the dock hands, half the maintenance shift who had no business being in a mess hall between meals. Word travels fast on a depot that small, and somehow every one of them had found a reason to be eating late that night. And under my prep table, taking up most of the floor space a man could stand in, Ember and Cole, awake, watching him the way Tundrex watch anything new, not snarling, not moving, just weighing it. Two sets of amber eyes tracking a stranger the size of a man who'd walked into their kitchen, like he owned the deck plating under it. "This ends today," Vale said, and read the order out loud, like reading it would make it heavier. Here is the part I still think about. Nobody in that hall argued with him. Marnie didn't argue. I didn't argue. What happened instead was that Marnie set a logbook down on the counter in front of him, opened to a page we'd been building for the better part of a year, and said, "Before you file that, sir, you'll want to check the roster." Vale read it. I watched his face do the work of understanding what he was looking at. We hadn't lied on a single line. That was the whole trick of it. Depot Order 119, kitchen-adjacent deterrence, we'd called it, filed 8 months earlier under a code so boring nobody upstairs had ever flagged it for review, designated 2 large fauna as an unofficial vermin control asset for the storage bay, on the sound logistical grounds that in 11 months, not one crate had been broken into by ridge rats, ice gulls, or anything else that used to help itself to the depot's dry stores before Ember and Cole moved in. Every incident report was real. Every ration figure was real. We had simply, patiently, for the better part of a year, described what was already true, in language a supply office couldn't object to. Vale looked up from the logbook at 2 adult predators who could have opened him like a ration crate and hadn't so much as lifted their heads off the deck plating, and I watched him understand something else, something the paperwork couldn't quite capture, that Ember and Cole weren't tolerating this room. They'd chosen it. Chosen the noise, the crowded tables, the smell of burnt coffee, chosen me specifically enough that Cole still pushed his head under my hand every morning, like he had at 8 weeks old. Except now the gesture nearly took my legs out from under me. "They're not tame," Vale said finally, like it was an accusation. "No," I agreed. "They're just home." He didn't have an answer for that, and he didn't have a rebuttal for the logbook either. Not one that wouldn't require him to admit in writing that he'd walked into a full mess hall to personally order the death of 2 animals that had, by his own department's numbers, been doing his job for him for the better part of a year. He closed the book, he set it down harder than he needed to, and he left without another word, which at Bristlecone counted as a full and complete surrender, and everybody in that hall knew it, and nobody said a thing until the doors sealed behind him. And then the whole room broke into noise at once. Boots on decking, someone banging a tray in something that might have been applause, Marnie laughing so hard she had to sit down. Ember got up then, unhurried, crossed the floor, and put her head against my chest hard enough to rock me back a step, the way she'd done since she was small enough to fit in a mixing bowl. Cole groaned and rolled over so his belly caught the light from the vents, entirely unbothered, because as far as he was concerned, nothing of consequence had happened at all. Just another loud man come and gone from a kitchen that was, by every honest measure anyone had bothered to write down, already theirs. Depot Order 119 is still on file. Nobody's touched it since. Every new supply officer who transfers through Bristlecone reads it eventually, usually with the same expression Vale had, and every one of them, so far, has left it exactly where it is. I never did fix that gap in the deck plating. I don't plan to.